A warmer friendly hello! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the Decent Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're getting a player's perspective on all these scrimmages and what we're going to be seeing in the Big East in segment number 2 with one of the Big East finest. Allan Ray, you remember him from his days when he was an all Big East performer, a tremendous guard back in the day when he was at Villanova. Now he does the Raining Threes podcast. He works as a little bit of a college basketball analyst on that front and so much more. And we are going to be taking a look at the lay of the land with regards to the Big East, his thoughts on Villanova coming into the year, and how we should be looking at some of these scrimmage results and a little bit behind these scrimmage results as well, because I think a lot of people look at the final score and they'll be like, wow, St. John's lost a pace. What in the world is going on here and everything like that? Well, there's a reason why you should be taking some of these results with a little bit more of a grain of salt, and Allan is going to be lending more of a player's perspective on that, and we're also going to be talking about a team or two out there in the SEC that he's bullish on as well. So we are going to be doing that in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, you guys fired in a few Twitter/X questions, which I'll be diving in on, and we'll take a look at a few things of note from college basketball on Sunday as well. And if you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @unit_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you are able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And I know that some of you guys were asking me, should we be upgrading/downgrading teams based on these scrimmage results, what have you? And this is something that I've tweeted out a few times. I know for sure I said it on this podcast at least once, and I will say it again. With regards to the actual final score in terms of these scrimmages, the final score should be counted like the points on Whose Line Is It Anyway? A tremendous show with Drew Carey, Ryan Stiles, and all those guys way back in the day. And for those that remember that show, the motto is, everything's made up and the points don't matter. The points themselves don't matter. Now, if you see something very glaring like, oh, the Team X, they don't have a guy north of 6'5" on their roster. They're getting destroyed on glass, and it's not like they have anyone sitting out or anything. This is their actual starting lineup. Then you know what, you might want to be downgrading their rebounding a little bit. When they go up against a team with size, you probably should be feeling a little bit more bearish about them. There are some takeaways that could be had from these scrimmages, but just because a team loses a scrimmage by 10 points doesn't mean that their year is going to be a calamity. And just because Arkansas knocks off Purdue in a scrimmage, which, I mean, it was a great scrimmage, it was for charity, you give a round of applause there, but that does not mean Arkansas should be the number 1 team in the country, and this doesn't mean that Purdue is like some sort of a bum team or anything like that. So I do think that that is very important to do. And also I had a question of if college basketball lines are easier to be able to decipher towards the beginning part of the season, and I think the proper term for it is volatile, because just in all the college basketball work that I've done, and I moved to Las Vegas in late 2017, so I've been betting this thing every year ever since then. And with regards to college basketball, I have had some of my greatest success early on during the season, like during that COVID 2020 year. I thought that these teams based around freshmen were going to have a terrible time. You may recall Kentucky had like a whole bunch of freshmen. Duke had a whole bunch of freshmen. I just faded the heck out of those teams, made a whole bunch of money, backed a bunch of like senior-laden teams during that COVID year, and it was a tremendous year. The season before, I had a miserable time of things. I had some misreads with regards to some of my projected order finishes and things like that, and it was my worst time of the year with regards to what I had early on. So I think that the word volatile is the best way of being able to put it, because everyone's sort of guessing a little bit. You do want to be taking note as much as possible as to some of these coaching changes if you're able to pick up on a tempo shift, and that's why I do encourage you guys to look at these scrimmages not from a final score perspective, but more or less a game flow perspective. Try to see who's out there on the court, who smooth the rotations are going to be evolving, because I do think that you can get some good edges, and that's something that I've been doing a little bit more of as well. So I don't think that these scrimmages by any means are useless. I do think that the final score gets blown way out of proportion, and these fan bases, they get a little bit overzealous either to the positive or the negative. So be looking at these in a appropriate way, but I think the word volatile is there because there's a lot of money to be made. If you are right on with regards to your preseason evaluations, if you've got a good gauge as to how the two-time waiver rule is affecting / not affecting these teams, being able to gather how a team's chemistry is going to be coming together with insert type of transfer here, if you've got a good edge there, you're going to be able to make a lot of money during the college basketball non-conference portion. If you misread, you could lose a lot of money. So I think the word volatile is the most appropriate way of putting it. So got those two questions in. Always do appreciate it. And then with regards to college basketball news that we did see on Sunday, I know that a lot of people are buzzing about Pace College knocking off St. John's, and I really don't think that that's worth noting. What is worth noting, though, is that there were a few guys that were out of the fold for St. John's in that scrimmage, like Jordan Dingle. He did not play in that game. There were multiple starters that were out of the fold for St. John's. Joel Soriano, he was not playing in that exhibition game as well. That is what I do want to note. Are these guys going to be out there opening night? Seem like in a lot of cases these were precautionary, but that's something that is on my radar, taking a look at that for what we are going to be getting night number one. With Tennessee, you just saw Santiago Vescovi along with Zakai Ziegler out with regards to their exhibition game. Now, Ziegler, I don't think is going to be out there night number one. He's dealing with an injury. He had a very devastating injury towards the back half of last year. I'd be very surprised if they tried him out there night number one. And in the case of Vescovi, it is not injury related. He apparently had something personal. It was something family related that happened in his native country out there in South America. I think he's from Uruguay. I might be mistaken there. I'm not sure of the specifics, but he is out due to a personal matter. We shall see if he's going to be out there night number one. That's just one of those things where you need to read the press clippings and you need to take the coach at his word, because I don't think that someone like Rick Barnes is going to be yanking our chain, being like, oh, he's still out there in South America when he's really in Knoxville, and vice versa. So to be taking note there, you also want to be just taking a look at some of these other guys that were missing with regards to a scrimmage, like Wooga Poplar. He was out for Miami's scrimmage that we did see on Sunday as well. So there are some takeaways there, but I do think that with regards to these scrimmage results, we do make a lot out of the final score, but there are a lot of takeaways that do not involve the final score, and a man that has been a part of a lot of these scrimmages, he knows exactly what you can / cannot gauge from them. That'd be Allan Ray. You remember him from his illustrious career with the Villanova Wildcats. He now does a great job with the Raining Threes podcast. He's joining me next to talk about that. We're going to be taking a look at the lay of the land in terms of the Big East and whether or not we could see 4 Final Four contenders out there in the Big East as well. That chat with Allan is coming up next right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Decent Family Podcast.
Sports Betting Innovative Analytics has taken the guesswork and emotion out of sports betting to bring you an innovative and trustworthy resource to enhance your journey to becoming a winning player. With industry-leading money-back guarantee options backed by their sophisticated modeling, they want to introduce you to a system that's not widely seen or available to help you beat the bookmaker. Specializing in NBA, college basketball, and WNBA, your first week is always free. Get started at SBIA1.com today.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Decent Family Podcast. It is tremendous to be joined by this man as Allan Ray. For those that remember college basketball about 15 to 20 years ago, this guy was one of the best guards in all of college basketball. Went on to have a nice professional career. A man that you remember very well from Villanova. It is Allan Ray. He does an absolutely tremendous job now in his own right, being able to take a look at the game of college basketball, doing some analysis, doing some podcast work, and I know that he is very much taking a look at what we're getting in the Big East this year and so much more. And you're able to follow him on Twitter /X at ARay4 and then the number 3. 4 is spelled F-O-R and then the number 3 all together. And Allan, great to have you aboard. Thank you.
Great being here. Ready to talk some basketball. Excited about it. Like you said, it's a lot going on and the season's about to start. So definitely ready to get into it.
Oh, yes. At this time next week, we are going to be having college basketball games. It is going to be oh so glorious. And we've got game action going on right now. And I want to get your thoughts on this because we're seeing leaked by the likes of Trilly Donovan, John Rothstein, and all those guys, these secret scrimmage results and the final scores. And I've been talking about this a lot on the podcast that it's not like they're completely meaningless or anything like that. But if you're a fan of, say, of Kansas or something like that, they win a scrimmage by 10 points, it doesn't mean that your team is going to win the national title game. Meanwhile, I know that a lot of people are freaking out about like St. John's losing to Pace and everything like that. It doesn't mean that your season's doomed or anything like that as well. But how do you gauge these scrimmage results just being a former player and having gone through a few of these scrimmages? Because I think that there are takeaways, and a lot of the takeaways aren't necessarily from the final score itself.
Yeah, like you said, these games are not to be taken seriously, especially by the fan base. More of things for the team. You basically is a practice. You know, we used to scrimmage George Washington all the time, and we're going in there, we're going over situations. You know, for example, let's say it's 3 minutes left in the game. White team is down 3 points. You have no timeouts, and you're in the bonus. Situations like that you work on in scrimmage games. I wouldn't say that they're not meaningless. You know, as a player, you want to go out there and get a good rhythm, see yourself play well, but it's not too serious. And you also got to take that factor in of like not trying to get hurt while you're out there as well.
Yep, absolutely. Like you don't want to see St. John's losing to Pace College at the same time because they lost to Pace College doesn't mean that on your power rankings they're below Division II schools as well. So I think that that's probably the best way of putting it. And with regards to some of these scrimmages as well, would you oftentimes notice, Jay Wright, perhaps throw out there some lineups that you wouldn't see during the regular season as well? Because I think that that's part of the context with some of these scrimmages as well that gets lost on a lot of people.
Exactly, and that's a great point that you bring up. You know, there might be a lineup in there that the coach is just trying to figure out if there's something that they want to use during the year, and it might not be the strongest lineup, but they might be trying to figure out, okay, let me get a third unit, a second unit in there. And those guys might not play well against the other team's first unit in the scrimmage. And it looks like, oh, well, you know, that team got blown out. Like you said, a Division II team, they just lost to this team. So that's where that comes in, what you said. That makes a lot of sense.
Yep, and I think that gets just alluded by a lot of people as well when they see a final score and they don't see a box score itself. And if you notice on the box score, wait a second, out of their projected 5 starters, 4 of them didn't play. That could be why they lost. I always think that that's so important to be diving in on, as Allan Ray, who now does a tremendous job analyzing the game of college basketball. You remember him from his Villanova days. He is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And Allan, speaking of your alma mater, Villanova, how do you gauge how things have went for the offseason for this team? Because there are a few losses from last season, but love the fact that they bring back Eric Dixon. I thought that they did a tremendous job bringing in the likes of TJ Bamba and company via the transfer portal. Tyler Burton, I think, was one of the more underrated and under the radar transfers in all of college basketball. And I feel very bullish about them and what we both know is going to be a very tough Big East.
I'm feeling bullish too, Greg. I'm feeling real bullish. I think they did a really good job after having the season that they had last year. You know, they went to the NIT, which is very uncharacteristic of Villanova, especially for a lot of people that's been following the program. I think they did a great job hitting the portal. That was one of the first things they did. Got some experienced guys in. You know, they lost Colin last year and along with Jermaine. Those were 2 big part of what Villanova did. So having them replaced was a great job. And then what you said, the transfers like Tyler, TJ Bamba, having Eric Dixon back, Justin Moore, that just shows a lot of leadership, a lot of experience, and we got guys that's ready to come in and play. Justin Moore is preseason All-American on a lot of people's lists. I'm feeling bullish about them as well. Looking forward to a great season in a tough Big East.
Yep, it is going to be a tough Big East, and I've been saying this on the podcast a little bit more, and I mentioned this when I did my conference preview with the one and only John Fanta. I feel like there's 4 legitimate teams that can make a Final Four run in the Big East. You've got a UConn team that, did they lose a little bit from last year? Yes, but you can never count out a defending national championship team. They've got a great coaching staff. They still have quite a bit of the backcourt from last year. Creighton, I love the fact that they picked up Steve Ashworth. Obviously, Villanova, who we just listed. I think that Justin Moore being back in the second half of the season showed you what this Villanova team truly is. I would take with a grain of salt what we saw when they were playing in like the PK 85 or what have you. And then obviously Marquette was able to win the conference last year. I'm not sure how you feel about those four teams, but I think all four can legitimately make a Final Four run, and I wouldn't be surprised to see any of those four win the regular season in the conference as well.
Yeah, like you said, it's going to be tough. There's going to be a lot of good teams. I really like UConn. Obviously, UConn won the championship last year, so like you said, you can never count them out. Clinging down low, if he develops and becomes more aggressive as a player this year, I see them going far, especially with his length and athleticism. That's hard to score around the basket, so that's a big plus for UConn. I love Marquette. I've always have. Marquette's a really good team, really coached well by Shaka Smart. Those guys give it their all for him when they're out on the court on both ends. Kind of reminds me of how we were with Coach Wright when we were at Villanova. Those guys just go out and just do everything for him. Tyler Kolek runs that show over there. Everybody know he's a great point guard. I really like Marquette too. Creighton's always a good team in the Big East. Every single year they've got players, and with Trey Alexander coming back, that helps them out even more. I always felt like he was probably the best player on the Creighton team. He had a great freshman year, had a great year last year, so I'm looking for big things from him. And like you said, Villanova, I feel like they're up there too with the roster that they put together this year. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see which team comes out on top in the Big East and who could go the furthest during the tourney.
Yep, I agree with you. And what I think is also very beneficial for all these Big East teams, and why I do think that they'll have a lot of success in March and beyond, is that I just love the fact that there's so many different styles in the Big East, because with Marquette, they obviously don't necessarily do the world's greatest job down low, but they do a nice job ripping the ball away. They do a great job with positionless basketball, everyone out there on the floor being able to pop threes. With regards to a team like UConn, they're just so balanced. And then you've got a team like a Villanova that they're going to play a little bit more slowly. I think that the defense is going to be significantly better than a season ago, but you know that they're not going to beat themselves. They're going to be great at the free throw line. As a matter of fact, number one at the free throw line in terms of percentage each of the last 2 years, and they're going to beat you that way. And then you've got other teams like at Seton Hall, who's built on defense, St. John's, you know that they're going to be pushing tempo along with Xavier as well. And I think that that's just so big as well when it comes to a March setting, and a big reason why a conference like the Big East has had success, while the Big Ten, while they've had a lot of good teams, has not been able to, because they see the same style darn near every night in conference play.
That is true. It is a bunch of different styles in the Big East right now. You know, I really consider the Big East, if not the best conference, is the number 2 conference right behind the Big 12 when it comes to basketball. And like you said, St. John's coached by Rick Pitino. There's a lot of great coaching in the Big East as well. Rick Pitino, Dan Hurley, Ed Cooley, Shaka Smart. Every night you got battles on the court as well as on those sidelines too, which is also a great thing, and I think is overlooked by a lot of people. They don't really talk about the coaching that's going to be in the Big East this year. And with Ed Cooley down in Georgetown, you never know what can happen down there with his new situation. So it's going to be very interesting this year to see how the Big East plays out.
It is going to be lots of new coaches, some same faces in new places as well when it comes to Ed Cooley as well. So very much looking forward to that. As joining me on the show, we do have Allan Ray. He does an absolutely tremendous job taking a look at this great game of college basketball, and he is joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And Allan, I know that we've been talking a lot about the Big East, and this can be Big East-centric. It can be just darn near any team in the country if you want it to be as well, but just the way that you've been taking a look at college basketball, is there perhaps a team or two that, as you've been evaluating them more, as you've been diving in a little bit, that you're feeling a little bit more bullish on coming into the upcoming season?
Kentucky Wildcats. I think they've done a great job this year recruiting. It kind of feel like they getting that swagger back a little bit. At least that's how I feel, in my opinion. They got some great guys coming in with Wagner and Rob Dillingham. Those guys are really explosive. I just feel like Kentucky is getting that rhythm back. They're getting those players. They didn't have a great year last year, so I think they're looking to really do something this year.
With the Kentucky Wildcats, but I think it's going to be big for them as well, is trying to be able to peak late, because I always take a look at a lot of those teams, ironically enough, in the SEC, because Arkansas has been the gold standard of this. They lose some of those games out of conference where it's like, what in the heck just happened? Arkansas losing in like their home state to Hofstra and things like that. And I love Hofstra, but if you're Arkansas, that's not a loss that you should be taking non-conference, but then they get into conference play and they absolutely light it up. Do you think that Kentucky could be a good candidate for a team like that this year?
Yeah, I think so. And they got the addition with Hunter Dickinson there as well. I think they can be one of those teams that kind of blossom towards the end. A lot of his teams do that. So, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see. But I think that they're moving in the right direction this year. And I know Kentucky fans love to hear that.
Absolutely. And what I do think is a little bit questionable with Kentucky is that Aaron Bradshaw injury. But I do think that he should be good to go in conference play. And that's when it's really going to matter for Kentucky. So I think that is so big. And just how big is it taking a look at these freshmen in this day and age as well? Because I know that Kentucky is very much going with a lot of guys that do not have a lot of college experience. They were able to get Trey Mitchell via the transfer portal with everything that happened with West Virginia. I can't remember seeing an offseason worse than the one that West Virginia has had. That has been brutal to say the least, but Kentucky were the beneficiaries there. But really past Mitchell and Antonio Reeves, there's not a lot of experience out there. And I do think it's a little bit bold in this day and age in which the transfer portal and all that happened with the COVID year does allow for a lot more fifth-year guys and a lot more experience. And Kentucky is looking to get back to their roots when they won that national title with Anthony Davis.
And I think when it comes to recruiting, especially with nowadays with the transfer portal, Kentucky could have easily hit the transfer portal and got some older guys, but I think that they really have trust in their freshmen that they have coming in. And those young guys can really play. It's hard for freshmen to come in nowadays, college basketball, and play right away. They are going to take a chance with these young guys moving forward.
And I do think that that's such an interesting look for them. And I do think that with regards to the talent and the talent itself, it is certainly going to be there. A little bit of question mark as to how that team is going to gel, but that's why you've got the entirety of a college basketball season as well. And I know that there have been more and more teams that have been trying out things in the non-conference to be a peak when it comes to the conference portion of their schedule. And if they're able to do that, I think that would be very beneficial. And something that is beneficial to this podcast is getting great guests aboard. And Allan, I know you're certainly that and then some. You had a great career over at Villanova. Now you're doing a tremendous job taking a look at this game that we all know and love of college basketball. I know that you've been doing some work as an analyst. I know that you've been doing some podcasting work as well. So let the good people at home know what you're all going to be doing this college basketball season and how they're able to follow your podcast and all of your other works on social media and other platforms.
Appreciate you giving me the opportunity to be on here. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter. My handle is ARay43. That's FA4R and the number 3. Then you could find me with my podcast, Rain in Threes. We talk a lot about Villanova basketball. We're going to do some spaces this year, a couple of live shows. We got a watch party coming up in New York City where Villanova is playing against Maryland. So we're going to have a nice watch party there. Details are on the Rain in Threes Twitter page. So definitely you can check me out. And if you're in the area in New York around November 17th, you can come through and check us out.
And by the way, that Villanova versus Maryland game, when we do get it, that is going to be a very good game. That's going to be a rubber meets the road game for both of those teams and a Hakeem Hart revenge game as well. So that is going to be absolutely tremendous. And Allan is doing an amazing job taking a look at this game that we all know and love. He certainly has forgotten more about basketball than I know, as he had such an illustrious career over at Villanova, and was great to be able to get him on the show today. A big thanks to Allan for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VC Family Podcast. And if you do like sharing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GNN_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way, that is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated, and then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, and we are now officially 1 week away from the start of the college basketball season. If you're looking for any of the conference previews I've done, as I've done a specialized conference preview podcast for all 32 of these conferences, just scroll down if you're on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, any of those fine podcast providers I listed below, and you'll be able to find it. They're all listed by the conference that I previewed, so we've got you guys all covered there. And here in this final week before the start of the season, just giving you guys all the news that we're seeing, guys that might be in/out of the fold, opening night and getting the perspective of some great guests. And then once we get in season, picks and analysis on every single game, every single day. So appreciate you joining me today, and I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine, and maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them, from disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.